They clapped for each other, never for me. They smiled for the camera. I stood outside the frame, and the night I heard my own son say the greatest gift I could give this family was to disappear, I understood something. I had already disappeared to them, but not for long. I'm Tom Harris, 74 years old, a farmer in Fairhope County, Virginia. My hands are cracked, my back crooked from years bent over soil, but I've kept this land breathing. 3 generations have eaten from fields I planted, drunk water I fought to keep flowing, slept under roofs I patched in the rain. Yet when people spoke of the Harris family, I wasn't mentioned. My name was a ghost in my own house. Take my granddaughter's wedding. For months I worked, hammer in one hand, hoe in the other. I built a dance floor out of reclaimed oak, strung lanterns along the sycamore trees, even coaxed roses to bloom out of season. Every corner of that farm held a piece of me. Still, when the program came back from the printer, I searched the lines once, then again. My name wasn't under family, wasn't under hosts, just a single mention. Special thanks to Tom Harris for helping with chairs. Chairs. That was what decades of sacrifice had been boiled down to. I didn't complain. I'd learned silence the way some men learn patience, with blood. When my wife was ill, I sold half my tractor to cover her medication. When my son fell behind on his mortgage, I wrote the check and told him not to mention it. When the roof leaked over my daughter's kitchen, I drove through a storm to fix it myself. Each act was just family duty. Each receipt stuffed into a shoebox, each canceled check buried in a folder upstairs. I thought maybe one day they'd see, maybe they'd remember. But people don't remember what they've decided to erase. The night before the wedding, I carried a ladder back to the barn. The sky was swollen with clouds, cicadas buzzing like restless wires. That's when I heard them through the half-open window, my son and daughter, voices low, bitter. "We've done everything for him," my daughter said. "Everything." My son laughed. "We've carried him long enough. The best gift Dad could give this family is to disappear after the wedding." The words slid through me sharper than any blade. My hand slipped on the ladder rung. It clattered loud against the wall. But they didn't even check the window. They just went on talking about caterers and photo booths, as if burying me was another line item in the plan. I didn't shout. I didn't storm in. I simply walked back into the dark, the cicadas buzzing like they knew the truth. That night, I sat at the small desk in my room, knees aching, and pulled out the shoebox I had hidden beneath blankets. Receipts from pharmacies, bank slips, invoices for lumber and tools. Proof. Each piece was a page in a story they had tried to burn. I spread them across the desk until the wood disappeared beneath years of sacrifice. My name was on every line, not as a burden, as the one paying, the one keeping everything afloat while they strutted around calling themselves self-made. The house downstairs roared with laughter, relatives drinking, toasting the bride and groom. I stared at those papers until dawn lit the edges of the curtains. Then I rose, dressed in silence, and packed one small bag. My guitar case leaned in the corner, dusty but waiting. I hadn't touched it in years. That morning, I picked it up. By the time the sun broke over the fields, I was gone. I left a note on the kitchen table. Short, plain, just 4 words: check the receipts, Dad. The road out of Fairhope smelled of wet earth and gasoline. I drove my old Ford straight into town, stopped by the lawyer's office, and laid the shoebox on his desk. He looked at me like I'd dropped a bomb. In a way, I had. "Mr. Harris, "Do you know what you've kept here?" he asked, flipping through the yellowed slips. "Proof?" I said. "More than proof. This is ownership. Every loan, every repair, every debt forgiven, documented under your name. They can't touch this land without you, and if you choose to sell—" He trailed off. "I do," I said. My voice didn't shake. That night, while the family posed under the sycamores without me, champagne in hand, I signed papers in a small office lit by a single lamp. My signature wasn't just ink. It was a strike of lightning. I drove until the farm was a shadow in the rear view. The coastal highway opened like a vein of silver. Salt wind filled the cab, stung my eyes, cleared my lungs. For the first time in decades, I wasn't driving for someone else, but gossip moves faster than trucks. By the time I checked into a cheap motel by the harbor, the local paper already carried the headline, "Grandpa Tom Abandons Family, Steals Fortune." My children had wasted no time twisting the knife. In their story, I was a thief, a deserter, a man who left his sick wife to fend for herself. I stared at the printed lies under the flicker of a neon sign. Anger didn't come. Not yet. Just a steady, cold certainty. Because I had the shoebox. Because I had every scrap of truth. And when I decided to open it, the whole county would see who had been carrying whom. I closed the motel curtains, laid my guitar across my knees, and let my fingers hover over strings stiff with dust. My hands remembered the chords. My voice trembled, but didn't break. For years I had been silent. Tomorrow the music would begin, and when it did, they'd finally hear me. The first morning on the coast, I woke to gulls. They screamed outside the motel window like they'd been sent to drag me out of bed. The air smelled of salt and fried batter from the diner across the street. For the first time in years, I didn't hear anyone shouting my name for help, or bills dropped on the kitchen table, or laughter from a party I wasn't invited to. Just gulls. I poured black coffee from the lobby thermos and opened the local paper again. My son had made sure the gossip traveled faster than truth. Grandpa Tom steals family land, wife left behind sick and alone. Bold letters, center of page. The article painted me as a tyrant, a miser. Said I'd hidden money, forged documents, even tricked my own children. There was a photo of the farm, lanterns strung in the yard, captioned, "Generations of Harris Legacy Betrayed." Betrayed. That word almost made me laugh. The shoebox sat on the motel desk, stuffed with every receipt, every transfer, every pharmacy slip. I could prove who paid for what. I could prove who saved that farm again and again while they were busy posing in suits. Still, lies have a way of sticking, especially when they come wrapped in polite voices and wedding smiles. I knew the town would believe them, for now. So I started with the lawyer. Mr. Tully was gray-haired, sharp-eyed, the kind of man who spoke slowly but cut deep. When I laid the shoebox on his desk, he leaned back. "This is dynamite, Tom. Not just proof. You've got leverage." I nodded. "Lock the land so they can't touch it. Sell what we can and make sure every payment I ever made is recorded in court." He raised an eyebrow. "You're not planning to crawl back?" I shook my head. "Not this time." By noon, papers were filed. Half the land sold clean. The other half moved into a trust under my name only. My children couldn't so much as plant a flower on that soil without my signature. When I walked out of the courthouse, the sky had turned sharp blue, wind snapping off the bay. Freedom felt like that, raw, cold, but alive. I carried my guitar down to the harbor that evening. I hadn't played in decades, not since before the kids were born, when weekends were barn dances and I was still the man with a voice people wanted to hear. I sat on a bench near the pier, tuned the strings as best I could, and started slow. A simple folk tune, nothing fancy. At first no one stopped. Then a little boy tugged his mother's sleeve and pointed. She smiled, dropped $1 in the case. Another man clapped along. Before long, a small circle had formed. Not family, not friends, strangers, but they listened. They really listened. Their applause wasn't charity. It was recognition. That night, back in the motel, I stared at my hands. They trembled, not from age, but from something I hadn't felt in years. Worth. But freedom never lasts without a fight. 2 days later, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Dad. My son's voice. Cold. Clipped. We know what you did. Selling the land, transferring the trust. You've ruined everything. I ruined nothing, I said quietly. I just kept the proof. You think anyone's going to believe you. Everyone already read the paper. You're a thief in their eyes, a coward. Mom's sick, and you abandoned her. My jaw clenched. Your mother is fine, and you know it. Silence. Then he spat. You're dead to this family. When people ask, we'll tell them you stole from us. That's the story now. The line went dead. I sat there with the phone buzzing in my palm, staring at the shoebox on the desk. Proof. More than enough. But proof isn't always enough to change a story already poisoned. That night, I walked down to the festival grounds. The town held a summer fair every year by the docks. Food stalls, local bands, fireworks over the water. I hadn't been in decades, not since I was young enough to stay up past midnight. I signed my name on the open mic list. Just Tom. No last name. When my turn came, I stepped onto the small wooden stage. Lights were hot on my face. The crowd was loose from beer and barbecue, not expecting much from an old man with a guitar. I strummed once, twice. Then I began. The song wasn't fancy, just words I'd written in the motel, scrawled on the back of a diner receipt, about working hands, about silence mistaken for weakness, about family that forgets the shoulders they stand on. By the second verse, people stopped eating. By the third, I heard someone sniffle. When I finished, there was a pause, the kind that weighs heavy, then applause, real applause. A young reporter came up after. Sir, that song, did you write it? Could we talk? I hesitated, then nodded. We sat on a bench by the water while fireworks cracked overhead. I told him my story. Not everything, not yet, but enough. The receipts, the shoebox, the words my children had spoken the night before the wedding. He scribbled furiously, You have documents. Yes, everyone. He looked at me hard. Would you let me see them? I thought of the lies already circling, of my children's smug faces at the wedding. I thought of my name rotting in the newspaper. Then I nodded once. Tomorrow, I said. Bring your camera. He grinned like a man holding fire, and that's when I realized the story wasn't theirs anymore. It was mine. But stories burn bright, and the ones who fear the truth will do anything to put the flame out. The reporter's name was Eli Jennings, 26, hair too long for his tie, voice quick like he was always chasing the next deadline. He met me at the diner the next morning, camera slung over his shoulder, notebook ready. You brought the box? He asked before the waitress even poured coffee. I slid the shoebox across the booth. The cardboard was soft with age, but the contents were sharp. He pulled out slips one by one, laying them across the formica table like playing cards. Receipts for lumber, pharmacy bills, bank transfers. Sir, this is airtight, he said, eyes wide. You got a paper trail 20 years long. Why didn't you ever show anyone? Because I thought silence was loyalty, I said flatly. He nodded slowly, like a man realizing silence could also be a weapon. By the time we left the diner, Eli had a folder thick with photocopies and my quiet permission to print the truth. For the first time since I left the farm, I felt lighter, but that same evening, the storm began. A knock rattled my motel door. I opened it to find a deputy sheriff, hat low, expression careful. Mr. Harris, we've had a complaint filed against you, fraud and elder neglect. Says you siphoned funds from your children, abandoned your sick wife, forged signatures on property transfers. The words landed like cold water. Forged. Those papers were mine. Everyone. He raised his palms. I'm just here to let you know you'll be hearing from investigators. Might be wise to get your own attorney lined up. I closed the door slow, heart hammering. They weren't wasting time. The family had turned gossip into accusations, accusations into law. The phone rang that night. Eli again. They're pushing back hard, he said. Your son called the paper, said you're unstable, said you've got early dementia. They're trying to cut you off at the knees before your story prints. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my guitar propped against the wall. Let them talk. I've got proof. Proof is good, Eli said, but proof doesn't stop a smear. You need witnesses, people who saw what you did, what you paid, what you built. The word twisted in my chest. Witnesses. I thought of neighbors who'd seen me patch roofs in the rain, the hardware clerk who watched me sign checks, the pharmacist who filled prescriptions I paid for in cash. They were still out there, and for the first time I realized I might not be alone in this fight. The next day I drove back inland, not to the farm, God no, but to the edges of town, stopped by the pharmacy. The clerk, a woman named Janice, looked up from behind the counter and blinked. Mr. Harris, haven't seen you in a while. How's your wife? She's fine, I said. Janice, do you remember who paid for her meds these last years? She didn't even hesitate. You did. Every time. Cash or check? I nodded. Would you be willing to say that out loud? Her brow furrowed. Why? Because my own family says I never did. She pressed her lips together. Then she tore a sheet of paper from her pad, wrote fast, signed her name. Take this, and if anyone asks, I'll testify. I thanked her. For the first time in weeks, my throat burned with something close to gratitude. By evening, I had 3 letters in my pocket, from Janice at the pharmacy, from a lumberyard owner who remembered my checks, from a neighbor who watched me dig trenches for irrigation while my son sat inside with a beer. Witnesses. But the family wasn't slowing down. The next morning, the motel clerk knocked timidly on my door. Sir, someone dropped this for you. He handed me a folded newspaper. Not Eli's article, another one. Headline, Tom Harris, Betrayer or Betrayed. The story quoted my children at length. My son, Dad's been confused for years. We've carried him out of pity. This land, he never even understood the finances. My daughter, he doesn't remember birthdays. He wanders off. We worry about him. Now he's lashing out. They were painting me as senile, as a man losing his grip. I read it 3 times, rage growing sharper each pass. My mind was clear, my memory intact. They knew it. But they also knew townsfolk would rather believe a clean lie than a messy truth. I called Eli. My voice didn't tremble. Print it. Print everything. Receipts, statements, letters. If they want to call me a ghost, let's see how ghosts sound when they sing. That weekend, he did. The article hit on Sunday. Front page. The silent backbone of the Harris farm. It listed every debt I'd covered, every repair, every canceled check with my signature. Janice's letter was quoted, the lumberyard owner's testimony, the neighbor's account of me in the fields at dawn, and at the bottom, a photo. Me on the pier, guitar in hand, eyes half shut against the wind. Caption, "For once, he plays for himself." The phone rang non-stop after that. Some calls were strangers, voices thanking me, saying they believed me. Some were family, screaming, cursing, leaving threats. I ignored them all, but one message came late that night, low and tight. My daughter's voice. "Dad, stop this. You don't know what you're doing. You're going to ruin us. If you print one more thing, you'll regret it." Her words weren't shaky. They were calm, certain, and that was when I understood. Gossip was only the first strike. They weren't done. The next morning I woke to the smell of smoke, not from the diner, not from cigarettes, from somewhere close. I pulled back the curtain. In the motel parking lot, my truck was on fire. Flames licked the tires, glass cracking loud in the quiet morning air. Someone had sent me a message, and I knew exactly who. The truck burned fast. By the time the fire crew arrived, there wasn't much left but a blackened frame and a twisted steering wheel. I stood in the parking lot, motel slippers on my feet, watching smoke rise into the gray morning sky. The deputy who'd warned me about fraud charges showed up again, notebook in hand. "Any idea who'd do this, Mr. Harris?" he asked, though his eyes said he already knew. I didn't answer. I just looked at the flames. The clerk from the motel came out wringing his hands. "Sir, I can't have this kind of trouble here. You understand. Maybe it's best you find another place." So, by noon, I was standing at the harbor with one bag, the shoebox, and my guitar case. The truck had been my last piece of the farm of that life. Now it was gone. Burned like they wanted me erased. I rented a room above a bait shop. The walls smelled of salt and old rope, but it was quiet. From the window, I could see the pier. The water stretched wide and gray. Every night, I could hear the tide roll in steady like breath itself, but quiet didn't last. That evening, Eli called. His voice was tight. "Tom, you need to know. Your kids hired a lawyer, big firm out of Richmond. They're pushing for an injunction against me. Claim my article was defamatory, that I colluded with you to smear them." I almost laughed. "You wrote the truth." "Truth doesn't stop lawsuits," he said. "They want me silenced. And if they can't gag me, they'll drag your name through court until you got nothing left." I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the shoebox. "Let them try. I've got the receipts." "Good. Keep them close," Eli said. Then his voice dropped. "And Tom, be careful. People who start fires don't stop with trucks." The line went dead, leaving me with only the hum of the tide below. The next morning, I carried the shoebox to a safe deposit box at the coastal bank, paid extra for double lock. For the first time in weeks, I walked out lighter. If they came for me, they wouldn't get the proof. 2 days later, I stepped onto the pier for another open mic night. Folks clapped as I tuned my guitar. A few shouted my name. Not Burden, not Ghost, My name? I played a song about the farm, about soil that remembers every footprint, even when people forget who tilled it. When I finished, people stood, not polite claps, standing real. Afterward, a man approached. Tall, polished shoes, slick hair, introduced himself as Daniel Reed, a local councilman. Mr. Harris, your story has stirred people. Folks talk about you as a symbol of the forgotten. I'd like to help. Maybe set up a town hearing, let you present your side officially. Clear the air. I studied him. His smile was too smooth, but his offer was tempting. A chance to speak in front of everyone, not just through Eli's pen. Think about it, he said, slipping a card into my pocket. Fairhope isn't just theirs. It's yours, too. That night, I wrote in my journal. They tried to erase me with fire. Maybe it's time I speak with flame of my own. The hearing was set for Friday evening in the town hall. Old wooden building, American flag limp in the summer heat. Folding chairs lined up in neat rows. People filled every seat. My children sat in the front, faces smooth as polished stone. My son in a tailored suit, my daughter clutching a Bible for show. Councilman Reed opened the floor. We're here to hear both sides of a family dispute that spilled into our community. Let's remember, civility. Civility. That word almost made me laugh. My daughter went first, tears at the ready. Our father, he's not well. He forgets things. He imagines debts that were never his. We've cared for him for years, and this betrayal has broken us. Gasps from the crowd, heads nodding. Then it was my turn. I walked slowly to the podium, guitar case in one hand, shoebox in the other. The crowd hushed. I opened the lid, pulled out a receipt, held it up. This is from the pharmacy. My wife's insulin, paid by me. Date 2016, my check, my signature. Another paper. Roof repairs, lumber, paid by me. Date 2018. One by one, I laid them out on the podium, a paper trail heavy as bricks. My children call me a burden, I said, voice steady, but I carried this family on my back while they called themselves self-made. I fixed their debts. I patched their roofs. I paid for their medicine. And when I asked for nothing, they said the best gift I could give was to disappear. The room was silent. Only the ceiling fan creaked. Then I opened the guitar case. You called me a ghost, I said, strumming once hard. Well, ghosts have voices. I played the song I'd written on the motel night. Raw, simple, each chord a nail in their lives. By the time I finished, half the room was standing. Some clapped, some cried, but not everyone, because as I stepped away from the podium, I saw Eli at the back, his face pale, mouth tight. He slipped me a folded note as I passed. I opened it with shaking hands. 6 words, written quick. Don't trust Reed. He's with them. My heart thudded. Councilman Reed, smiling at the front, shaking hands with my son. I had walked right into their trap. The applause was still echoing when Councilman Reed raised his hand for quiet. He smiled at me like a poker player holding the winning card. Thank you, Mr. Harris, he said smoothly. Your song was touching, but our community needs clarity, not sentiment. Your children have provided us with evidence, too. He gestured, and my son stood. From a leather briefcase, he drew out glossy papers, neat stacks clipped together. Reed held them up. Bank statements, legal filings, reports from doctors suggesting early memory loss, all pointing to one truth. Mr. Harris has confused his finances, and his children, out of love, have tried to protect him. A murmur spread through the hall. Eyes turned back to me, doubtful. My daughter stood, her Bible pressed to her chest. We don't want to hurt him. He's our father, but he's been manipulated. That article in the paper, that was Eli Jennings, a young man exploiting an old one for attention. I glanced at Eli in the back. His jaw clenched, but he stayed silent. Reed leaned closer to the mic. This hearing isn't about silencing you, Mr. Harris. It's about safeguarding the community from false claims. Your family has filed a petition to have you declared legally incompetent for your protection. The words hit like stone, incompetent. The crowd erupted, whispers, gasps, a few nods of agreement. My knees locked under me, but I didn't move. This is a setup, Eli hissed when I stepped off the stage. They're trying to strip your rights before your story grows legs. I breathed slow. My hands itched to slam the shoebox on the council table, scatter receipts like shrapnel, but something in Reed's smirk stopped me. They wanted me angry, wanted me to look unhinged, so I stood still, quiet. Do you deny these reports? Reed asked, waving the so-called evidence. I deny nothing, I said, because I don't need to. The truth speaks for itself. Then I turned my back on them all and walked out. The night air hit me like cold iron. Behind me, voices buzzed, hungry for gossip. Ahead, the town stretched silent. Eli caught up. Tom, this isn't over. They'll file in court by Monday. Once that happens, you could lose control of your assets, even your freedom. I stared at the dark horizon. Then we make Monday come faster, for them. What do you mean? I lifted the guitar case. If they want to call me incompetent, I'll show them competence loud enough the whole county can't look away. The next morning, Eli and I drove to Richmond. He had contacts at a larger paper, one that reached beyond our county lines. The newsroom buzzed with phones and clattering keyboards. Eli introduced me to his editor, a hard-eyed woman named Dana. You've stirred a hornet's nest, she said. Your kids are trying to brand you senile. They want control of the farm, the money, everything. If we run your side, we'll need more than receipts. We'll need a face, a voice, a stage. I nodded. Give me one. By Friday night, I had it. Dana arranged a live segment at a community radio station, broadcast county-wide. No filters, no edits, just my voice. That evening, I sat in the studio, headphones heavy on my ears, mic close enough to taste the metal. The host introduced me. Tonight, we have Tom Harris, the farmer whose story has shaken Fairhope County. Mr. Harris, the floor is yours. I spoke slow, steady. I told them about the shoebox, about the nights fixing roofs in storms, about paying for medicine, tuition, debts, about being called a burden while my hands bled for their comfort. Then I strummed the guitar, sang the song again, this time not for a small crowd, but for every kitchen, every car, every porch radio across the county. When I finished, the phone lines lit up. Callers poured in. I remember seeing Tom patch the school fence. He gave my brother work when no one else would. That man is no burden. The host leaned into the mic. Seems the county has its verdict. For a moment I felt it. Vindication. But vindication has a price. The next morning, I returned to my room above the bait shop. The door was ajar. Inside, the shoebox was gone. Receipts, proof. My entire defense vanished. I stood in the wrecked room, salt air cutting through the broken window. My chest tightened, but my head stayed cold. On the nightstand was a single slip of paper, my daughter's handwriting. No more ghosts, Dad. You stay quiet now, or the next thing we burn won't be a truck. The shoebox was gone. My hands hovered over the splintered nightstand, the empty floor. I felt the same way I had when my wife first told me the doctor's diagnosis. Cold, hollow, steady. I didn't shout, didn't curse. That's what they wanted, an old man rattled, broken, ready to give up. Instead, I sat on the bed, closed my eyes, and breathed, because what they didn't know was that the shoebox had been nothing more than bait. The real documents, the originals, were locked in the coastal bank vault under my name alone. What they'd stolen were photocopies, enough to wave around, but worthless in court, and I'd been counting on them to take the bait. I picked up the slip of paper they'd left, my daughter's threat, scrawled sharp. The next thing we burn won't be a truck. I folded it carefully, slid it into my wallet. Evidence. Then I called Eli. They broke in, I told him. Took the copies? Damn, he muttered. What do we do now? We let them show their hand, I said. They'll parade those papers like trophies. And when they do, we'll pull the rug out from under them. He whistled low. You're colder than they think, Tom. Cold is all I've got left. The following week, the family held a press conference on the courthouse steps. I didn't attend, but I watched from a diner TV while locals whispered around me. My son stood at the podium, flashing the stolen receipts like a magician with fake cards. These documents, he declared, prove our father's confusion. Random slips, exaggerated bills, he's spinning lies to smear his own blood. My daughter chimed in, tears painted on her cheeks. We love him, but he's sick, and the community is being misled. Applause followed from their friends, their church allies, the ones who loved free barbecue at farm parties. I sipped my coffee and smiled because the trap was set. 2 days later, Eli's follow-up article dropped. Headline, The Harris Heirs and the Missing Shoebox. Inside, photos of the break-in, testimony from the motel clerk, and, my favorite part, a notarized statement from the bank confirming the originals were under my name, untouched, sealed. My children had stolen nothing but shadows. The town turned overnight. Neighbors muttered in grocery lines. Strangers stopped my kids on sidewalks. Their story crumbled, and for once I didn't have to raise my voice. But they weren't done. The threats started again, slipped under doors, whispered outside my window at night. A car followed me once, headlights too bright in my mirror. They were cornered animals now, teeth bared. That was when Dana, the Richmond editor, called. Tom, I've been thinking, she said, your story isn't just local anymore. People are paying attention. You could take this national papers, maybe even TV, expose them on a bigger stage. I hesitated. Going bigger meant cutting off any path back. No reconciliation, no soft landing, just a clean burn. But then I remembered the night before the wedding, their voices through the window. The greatest gift you can give is to disappear. I didn't need reconciliation. Do it, I said. She arranged a live interview for the following week. Cameras, lights, questions sharp as knives. I prepared the way I used to prepare soil, patient, thorough, relentless. Gathered bank statements, witness letters, even the threat note from my daughter. The night before the broadcast, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window of the bait shop room, guitar across my knees. The tide was high, waves slamming rocks like a warning. I strummed softly, almost a prayer, then set the guitar down, because tomorrow my silence ended for good. But they struck first. The morning of the interview, I stepped out of the bait shop to find Eli waiting, face pale. Tom, it's bad. What is? He handed me his phone. A headline blared across the screen. Grandpa Tom under investigation for domestic abuse. I read the subhead. My children claimed I'd struck their mother, hidden funds, terrorized the household for years, lies dressed as confession. A police notice followed. I was wanted for questioning. People on the pier were already whispering, eyes darting to me. My interview was in 3 hours. But if the police found me before then, I'd be in a holding cell instead of on camera. I looked out at the waves, steady and endless. They thought they could bury me with lies, but I'd carried too much truth to drown now. I turned to Eli, voice sharp. Then we make the broadcast bigger. They want a stage. I'll burn the whole theater down. The interview had barely ended when the sirens wailed. Not outside in the distance, right at the studio doors. Red and blue light spilled across the floor, mixing with the camera lamps. The host froze mid-sentence. Viewers heard it live. I sat in the chair, headphones still clamped on my ears, guitar across my lap. My stomach didn't drop. It hardened because I knew this wasn't chance. They'd moved faster than I thought. The studio doors swung open. Deputies filed in, boots heavy on the linoleum, eyes darting from the cameras to me. One carried a thin folder, the kind you use when you don't have much but need to look official. "Mr. Harris," the lead deputy said, voice neutral, "we have a warrant to bring you in for questioning. Domestic abuse, financial misconduct. You'll need to come with us." The anchor swallowed hard. Dana, the editor, raised her eyebrows at me. Eli shot to his feet. "On what evidence?" he snapped. The deputy flipped the folder open. A sworn statement from Mr. Harris's children. Allegations of violence against his wife. Misappropriation of family funds. I could feel the county holding its breath through the cameras, everyone listening in their kitchens, cars, diners. Megan, my lawyer, didn't waste a second. She strode forward, voice sharp as steel. "These are unverified allegations." The DA's office was notified this morning that my client holds the originals of every financial document in a secure bank vault. If you detain him now, you interfere with an active case. I'll have your captain's badge on my desk by sunrise. The deputy hesitated. His eyes flicked from Megan to me, then to the camera light, burning red. He wasn't used to making arrests in front of an entire county. That's when my son's voice cut through. He was standing just beyond the deputies, suit pressed, tie gleaming, smile wide enough to look rehearsed. "Dad, don't drag this out," he said, loud enough for the microphones. "Come with us quietly. Don't make this worse." For a heartbeat, the studio blurred. I saw him not as a grown man, but as the boy who once tugged my sleeve to show me a stick figure drawn that said, "My dad saves the day." My chest burned. Then I remembered the night before the wedding, his voice through the window. "The greatest gift you can give this family is to disappear." I straightened in the chair, folded my hands on the guitar. "You want me quiet?" I said into the microphone. "You've always wanted that, but the truth doesn't vanish just because you shout louder." The phones in the control room rang like church bells, callers pouring in live. The host looked panicked, but Dana's eyes gleamed. She whispered, "Keep talking." I leaned toward the mic. "You hear those sirens? That's not justice. That's fear. My children would rather paint me as a monster than admit I kept them afloat. Every roof I patched, every medicine bill I paid, they'd burn it all down just to keep me from being seen." The deputy stepped closer. "Sir, please." Megan held up a hand. Not until the DA confirms. You want him in cuffs on live TV? Go ahead. Let the county watch you arrest the man who just produced proof of every dollar he spent to save his family. The deputy hesitated again. He tapped his radio. Static hissed. A voice crackled, "Proceed with transport." He looked at me, guilt flickering in his eyes. Then he reached for my arm. I didn't fight. Fighting would give them their story. Unstable old man lashes out. Instead, I stood slow, guitar slung over my shoulder, and faced the cameras. "I'm not afraid of their cages," I said clearly, "because cages can't hold the truth." The control room erupted. Phones, shouts, applause from the audience outside the glass. Dana mouthed, "Perfect." As the deputies guided me toward the exit, Eli pressed something into my hand. A folded note, scribbled quick. I slipped it into my pocket without looking. The hallway outside smelled of sweat and ozone. Reporters surged forward, cameras flashing. My son stood by the cruiser, arms crossed, a smirk tugging his mouth. My daughter held her Bible like a shield. The deputy opened the cruiser door. "County lockup," he muttered. I slid inside. The door shut heavy. Through the window, I saw my son lean down. He didn't smile this time. His lips barely moved, but I read the words. "Disappear, Dad. For good, this time." The cruiser pulled away, sirens off now, quiet. Only then did I unfold Eli's note. 6 words written in a rush. Bank vault compromised. Originals in danger. My chest tightened. The one weapon I had left, the proof, might already be in their hands. The cruiser rolled toward the county jail. My son's warning echoed in my ears, but Eli's note cut sharper. If the vault was compromised, the war wasn't about my freedom anymore. It was about erasing the truth itself, and I swore they would not win. The cruiser hummed low on the county road. Rain slicked the windshield, the wipers squealing like tired lungs. I sat in the back, hands folded on my lap, Eli's note burning a hole in my pocket. Bank vault compromised. Originals in danger. That was the real arrest, not my wrists, not my name. If the proof disappeared, they could bury me in silence forever. The deputy's radio cracked again. "Bring him straight in. DA wants him booked." Megan's car pulled in behind us, headlights steady. I could see her silhouette, calm, furious. She hadn't let go. Neither had Eli. At the station, the air stank of bleach and old coffee. They took my belt, my guitar, my wallet, but before they could lock me in, Megan swept through the door like a storm. Court order in her hand, signed by a Richmond judge. "You're not holding my client without verification of evidence," she snapped, "and if you've touched that bank vault, I'll drag every last one of you into court with him." The officers hesitated. One muttered, "Orders are orders." Megan's eyes were cold fire. So is contempt of court. They stalled, argued, and in that window of chaos, Eli slipped me a phone. "You trust me?" he whispered. I nodded. He tapped the screen. A live video feed opened. The bank vault, door wide. 2 men inside with flashlights, and behind them, my son, my daughter, hands rifling through folders, desperate, wild. "They're being recorded," Eli said. "Hidden cameras we planted yesterday. Dana's streaming it live." My breath caught. On the tiny screen, the county watched the heirs of Harris bend over stolen files, hissing at each other, tearing through papers that weren't theirs. My son's voice rose. "Find it! If he shows these, we're finished." Then my daughter, her Bible forgotten on the floor, spat, "He won't ruin us. Burn them if you have to." The feed shook as deputies stormed in. Yells. The camera caught my son's face, pale, cornered. My daughter clawed at the papers like they were rosary beads. The screen went black. Back at the station, silence fell. The same deputy who had shoved the warrant in my face now looked at the floor. Megan folded her arms. Evidence tampering, theft, fraud, want to add arson to the list. No one answered. By dawn, the county was buzzing. Eli's footage had already spread beyond our borders, not gossip this time, not slander, but fact. My children hadn't just lied. They'd incriminated themselves on camera. Charges dropped against me, filed against them. I walked out of the station with my guitar on my back, the rain gone, the streets washed clean. Reporters shouted questions. I said nothing. Silence was my weapon now, sharper than any speech. Weeks passed. My children went quiet. The farm was placed fully under my trust. Their names struck from every deed, their photos stripped from the community board. But I didn't go back. I had no use for a house that had become a grave. I stayed by the coast, played the pier on Friday nights. Folks clapped, not out of pity, but recognition. Once, a child tugged my sleeve. Grandpa Tom, sing the one about the soil again. His voice was bright, not burdened. That was enough. At night, I wrote in my journal, family is not the ones who silence you. Family is the place where your voice echoes back. One evening, I lit the lavender candle I'd kept from my wife's bedside. The flame flickered against the window glass. I set her photo beside it, her smile soft, eyes knowing. I kept it safe, I whispered. Not just the land, my name. The tide roared steady outside. A gull shrieked like a laugh. I closed the journal, set the pen aside. The phone buzzed once more. An unknown number. I didn't answer. I didn't need to, because they had finally learned I was not the ghost in their story. I was the fire they tried to smother, and I would never be silent again. I left them the farm, but only the debts.